Welcome back to Main Street Living. Danielle, we all love a good story, right? And not only is a well crafted story entertaining, but stories are also one of the most effective ways to get people to remember what you're telling them.
Yes, and our next guest has spent a career telling stories and is here to share some with us today. So please welcome award-winning journalist and author John Gliona. John, welcome to Main Street Living.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Hi,
So
good. How are
good.
you?
Thanks for having me.
So John, remarkable career as a journalist, writing for the Los Angeles Times as both a national and foreign correspondent for 26 years. And one of the favorite quips that you'll hear about journalism is that it's like a front row seat to life. Is that what it was like for you?
It was. If you imagine life as a major screen in a movie theater, a lot of the performances you get to go to as a journalist, you really don't want to go to. School shootings, random massacres, stuff. But most of the job is pure, unadulterated freedom and joy. It's a great thing to be able to tell your editor that, I got to be in Bali next week. There's some things going on, as I was able to say when I was based in South Korea. But another thing they say about journalists is that they're always the ones running toward the fire. But I would say the bad days are outnumbered by the good days, probably 25-1. So we'll take the bad with the good.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of pros and cons that come with it, but I think a pro is that you did get to travel the globe. What have been some of the most memorable stories and interesting stories that you've covered?
Oh gosh. Well, a lot of it involves, sometimes, terrible things happen in the world, earthquakes and tsunamis. I was in
Mhm.
Sri Lanka after a 2006 tsunami, traveling with a bunch of doctors
Mm.
from Los
Ugh.
Angeles. I was in, I spent several months in Japan after the 2011 tsunami and earthquake and tsunami. I was in Pakistan after Benazir Bhutto was shot, and I did a story about
Mm.
being on the trail with a with a politician in enemy territory when it's not safe here, but it's definitely dangerous there to be on the campaign trail. I covered Kim Jong Il's death.
Ah.
A lot of the stuff I did was just parachuting in to places for interesting stories that I kind of found and went and reported. And so, very briefly, in my time in Asia, I covered North Korea, South Korea, Japan, New Zealand, Australia, the Philippines, Indonesia,
Mm.
Singapore, Malaysia, and the Pacific Islands. And I used to brag to my wife that I said, "Honey, I cover 1/4 of the world's water mass." And she said, "That's fine, dear. What are you making for dinner?" So
Leave it to the wife
Priorities.
to
yeah,
say something like that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Put
I
your
like it. She had priorities. I like that. And we know
yeah, yep,
that
she
you
did.
had some maybe different priorities at some point as well, because you left the Los Angeles Times in that 2015. Why did you decide to take a different path?
Well, in 2015, at the time, the LA Times was going through some sort of ownership woes. And at the time, the company that called itself Trunk, strangest name for a company I've ever heard of, really, decided that they really wanted to offer buyouts to people with a lot of experience so they could hire a younger generation. And I get that, it happens in every industry. So that day, in I think it was Thanksgiving 2015. I think it was like 75 people left with a cumulative 1,000 years of experience. And the deal that was offered to me was, since I'd been there so long, if you go on Thanksgiving of 2015, we'll pay you for the entire year of 2016. So I figured that was a pretty good parachute, and I could reinvent myself and have my time's paycheck to sort of buttress me. So that's what I did. I started freelancing and traveling, and I was just doing it. I was doing it for myself now versus the impromptu of a big newspaper.
Mm. That's the way to do it. That's pretty
If you can
incredible
do it,
right there.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah. And you've been obviously writing a long time as a journalist, and you're an author as well. You've written some books. Tell us about your latest book called Outback Nevada: Real Stories from the Silver State. Why did you decide to write these stories?
well. The book is a collection of stories that I had worked on as a journalist, and I had when came back from Asia, I became the sort of a Western bureau chief for the Western United States, based in Las Vegas. And I remember saying to my editor, how much time do I got to spend in Vegas? Because I didn't really want to be the casino reporter, because Angelino, see, Vegas is a quaint little party town down the road, and I didn't really want to write about winnings, and this. So I wanted to get out there and talk to real folks. So he said, "Well, you'll figure that out." So I spent a lot of time in Nevada and spent a lot of time in the rural West, and they were just I found just so many interesting places that I yearned to be out there when I wasn't there. So after I left, some of the stories in this collection are from the Times, and some of them are some freelance clients like the Review Journal, which is the morning newspaper in Vegas. So an editor at the University of Nevada Press, they came up with an idea. Why don't we just like showcase your work? It's sort of like an aging rock band, me, coming up with a greatest hits album. You don't have to produce any new stuff, although I did a lot. I actually edited a lot of these and wrote a prologue and an epilogue, but a lot of the work was done before the book was published. So I had, many books that are written from scratch, and which is what I'm doing now. We can talk about that. But these stories were already produced, so it was kind of fun just to shape them into a package.
Wow.
Well, John, I mean, as you can see, they're greatest hits for a reason, first of all.
Yeah,
So we need
thanks.
to hear the greatest hits again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We want to hear more about your book, but we need to take a quick break. Can you stick with us and tell us
I
more about
will.
your
I
book in our
will.
next
I
segment?
will. Thank
Okay,
All
you.
right.
look forward to that with John Gliona. Welcome back into Main Street Living. We are here with award-winning journalist and author John Gliona talking about his new book. Your book, Outback Nevada: Real Stories from the Silver State, is a collection of stories about people and places you've encountered in Nevada. Do you think the people in Nevada are unique, or was that just the place where you were paying attention?
Oh yeah, they're definitely unique. A friend of mine asked me once, so what do people in, rural Nevada think about Reno and the people in Reno and Vegas? And I said, they don't think about you guys very much. Life is where you live it, and there are people who, lead lives that are more different than ours, but that doesn't mean that they don't have their Shakespearean tragedy and set in a night live comedy. And people are just, they adapt to their circumstances. And a small town, I have a joke with my wife, and we'll drive through some god awful small town someplace. I'll say, honey, let's move out here, and she just kind of look at me. And so I did spend a lot of time in those places. She never came, but it was just like opening up an unpolished diamond for me.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds so cool. I love diving in and exploring the unknown. So, can you tell us some of your favorite stories?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so many. I mean, I used to tell an editor of mine at the LA Times that my stories are like my children, and you
Oh,
can't love one more than the other. But there's some that worked out, and some that were more fun, and some. Uh, I once had a party at my house in Vegas, and the LA Times has a thing called the Column One, which is basically a narrative writing showcase on page one. So I had a party at Thanksgiving, and there were 5 people I'd written about at the party. So it was, I've made some friends along the way. But one of my favorite stories was a piece. It's the first one in the book, and it's entitled "Flash and Mr. Cool," and it's basically about two guys in their 60s, and they were the DJs in a small town radio station without much reach. One of them was one of the founders of Burning Man, and the second one was a developmentally disabled man who became his friend, who always wanted to be a radio DJ, and so he was Mr. Cool. And so uh, they what just hanging out with them for one of their radio broadcasts was just a lovely thing. Mr. Cool's mom had passed away, and so Flash, Michael Hopkins, had actually adopted him, legally, and so they lived in the town. So Dad was probably younger than the son, but they had just a great relationship, and that's the kind of that's the kind of people you meet out there. I think one of the excerpts I'll read to you in a moment is by a woman who runs a bar called the Long Branch Saloon in Crystal, near a defunct brothel. Her name is Miss Kathy, and Miss Kathy she's a tough lady, and I just liked her, her back and forth with customers. Everybody pays respect to her. Uh, I've gone out with guys who go into old mines looking for not gold but denim, because little do we know that denim really is, there's a fantastic wealth to old, denim was actually was pioneered by a tailor in Reno to outfit all these, prospectors and gold seekers coming out to the West. They needed good clothes to go out there. So, that with the bolts and the jeans and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of these things are discarded in these mines and they're still there. So I went out with some of these guys looking for that. I profiled, a priest in Laughlin who gives Sunday morning mass inside a casino, just because that's where people will go on a Sunday morning. So, wherever God wants him to go, that's where he goes. In this case, it's a casino. I could go on. I mean, I profiled a woman, I call her Lethal Letha, and she was the most prolific mountain lion huntress in northern Nevada. And she would, and now in California, I got a lot of letters on this one because, people in LA were saying, oh my God, how can you kill these wonderful creatures? Well, they are huntable at certain times of the year, and she skins them in her kitchen. And so that's where I sort of led my story. And I didn't realize how controversial it would be considering who my audience was. And I guess one of my favorite stories was a piece about two elderly women who were both in their mid 90s, who had been friends for 75 years, longer than many of us have been on the planet. And they were two pioneering women who lived in rural Nevada, who outlived their husbands. And every few weeks they got together. And it was just a lovely story of enduring friendship. So most of it, are just sort of like, I go out looking for subcultures and cool people. And when I find them, and I just like to hang out, and that's, and I keep writing my notebook, and that's where these stories come from.
Wow, you've got a lot to share there. So many good stories.
Yeah, each of these sounds like it could be like its own reality show or its own
Yeah,
sitcom.
no, it could be a reality show, definitely. But with a face like this, I'm no host, girls.
Oh, stop.
Yeah.
Well, but I think it's funny because I think as a culture, we've bought into the reality TV show or the TikTok where we want to see what people are doing in their daily lives.
Right.
And what's really cool about journalism, though, is I think you take away that trying to create conflict part that a lot of the producers will do for those TV shows.
Yeah, exactly.
And you guys tell it like it is. So I love those human interest stories that are just pure like that. Could you read us a little bit from your book?
Yeah, sure. I will read you just a few paragraphs about, in the prologue of the book about, for the reader first picking it up, it's like, well, what is this book about? So I'm writing about like this adventure we're about to take. So the prologue, which I call the There Out There, it begins, many people, mostly tourists, but also urban Nevadans, seem bewildered by the concept of taking that unsung drive between Las Vegas and Reno, or exploring any of the state's hinterlands like it was some crazy rocket launch into the void of outer space. What's out there, they ask, just a bunch of nothingness? The question has always baffled me. It's not nothingness, I say, but somethingness. Because out there is where the real Nevada lies. Whenever I grow weary of the noise of my Las Vegas life, when my suburban neighbors begin to grate and I itch for infinite vistas and endless two-lane straightaways, I point my car northward towards Nevada's untamed outback, towards Beatty and Goldfield, Tonopah, Pioche, and the Big Smoky Valley, Austin, Middlegate Station and Gerlach, Carver, Jackpot, and the countless points in between. I drive when I want to see wild Mustangs and burros grazed on the leather-colored landscape just off the highway tarmac. I drive when I want to gaze up at night skies so profoundly black I can see the glowing Milky Way and imagine just how far away heaven might be. I drive when I want to follow the swirling dust clouds kicked up by a country boy inside a pickup truck, gleefully barreling down some anonymous dirt road, carving out his own freewheeling rite of passage, a young man leaving a trail of smoke and grit to rival any jet engine, one that might be seen from the moon for all I know. When doing journalism or just for thrills, I drive when I want to see, hear, and feel rural Nevada, the real Nevada, that country-hearted salve for my curious big city soul.
John, I want you on Audible. I want to listen to this.
You have a way with words. It just paints this beautiful picture there. Where can our viewers go to get your latest book and learn more about you?
Well, johngliona.com is my website. I blog there frequently. And I'm writing another book now from the ground up about a rural town in Nevada on the Oregon border. So I'm blogging less, but johngliona.com, it has the full body of my work. It's a pretty substantial site, and you can go on, and all the countries I've written from the world and the states are all divided. So you can go, here and there. And the book, Outback Nevada, is available from the University of Nevada Press and from, and obviously Amazon.
Oh, all right,
So
John,
cool.
thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. We
Can
really
I come
appreciate
back? You
it.
guys are fun. I want to hang out some more.
Oh, we'd love that. Yes. Oh, you're the best. All right. Well, guys, don't go anywhere. We've been talking about Nevada, Danielle, and we're going to stay in Nevada. Coming up, we're going to explore a unique side of Las Vegas that you might never have seen. Stay with us.